Sha'ar Hagugilum, Gates of Reincarnation, Jewish Shamanism, of Soul Rectification. Chapter 1, 5 Levels of Soul. Part 10, Surrogate Levels of Soul. Know that after a person merits to take Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, and then blemishes all three of them through sin, he must reincarnate to rectify what he distorted. When he returns as a reincarnation and his nefesh comes to him, even though he rectifies this nefesh, his ruach will not come and enter him since it is blemished. Note 71, from the sin during the previous incarnation. How can it dwell and rest upon a rectified nefesh? Therefore, his ruach will reincarnate in another person, joined with the nefesh of a convert. Footnote 72. It will come inside the soul of a convert, which is created by the zivug of souls in the lower Gan Eden, or the Garden of Eden. Zohar, Mishpatim 98b. It will be likewise for the neshama in this manner. The completely rectified nefesh will receive a rectified ruach from a righteous person like him in specific and similar good deeds. He will be in place of his ruach. Similarly, if he completely rectifies his ruach, the neshama from a righteous person will come, as mentioned, and it will actually be in place of his own neshama. This is the sod of what Chazal say: righteous people are greater in death than during their lifetimes, etc. Sanhedrin 47a. This is also something the great uh, Sheikh al-Akbar, Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi, who is of the house of Wayne, which is also called Orabi, and they are the current and long-term rulers of Spain, and from the house of Bourbon. He wrote about 900 years ago that there are the living and there are the more alive. The living are those who are amongst us. The more alive are those who have passed on into what we call death, because the truth of the promise of their Lord has been realized to them. When this person dies, his nefesh will go with this ruach, note 73, from the righteous person, and because of it receive the blessing fitting for it. When his ruach itself, that reincarnated in another person and combined with the nefesh of a convert, as mentioned, is also completely rectified, the original nefesh will say, I will go and return to my first one, since it is rectified. Hosea 2:9, footnote 74. Once his ruach is also rectified, then the nefesh will choose to join its original ruach in the body presently hosting it. It works the same way for the neshama with respect to the ruach. After the person dies, when they return in a reincarnation to become rectified together. Footnote 75. Once the neshama is rectified, the nefesh and ruach will want to come from Gan Eden and join together with their original neshama in its present incarnation. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2, Rectification. This chapter discusses the order of the entry of Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama into the person at the beginning of their reincarnations, the first time, while new, footnote 76, that is, the first time the Nefesh comes into its own body, as will be explained. When a person is born and emerges into the air of this world, my notes, as DNA, you are maths and of the quantum realm. When you are formed as a zygote and develop lungs about 3 weeks, you are of the air of this world, as your host only breathes air of this world, as will be explained. When a person is born and emerges into the air of this world, his nephesh enters him. If his actions are appropriate, in footnote number 77, this will be explained in the upcoming chapter. If his actions are appropriate, he will merit his ruach, which will enter him at the completion of his 13th year, when he is called a complete person. Footnote 78, that is, an adult at which he is obligated to perform mitzvot. And it is known, footnote 79, in truth, for any person to live, he must already have all 5 levels of soul, since this is the way life supporting divine light, or Ein Sof, continuously flows to a person. Rather, as a person grows spiritually, he gains greater access to higher levels of his soul, which allow them to have a greater spiritual impact on his body, facilitating more spiritual growth. If henceforth his actions are again appropriate, then his neshama will enter him at the completion of his 20th year, as mentioned in of Mishpatim. Sabah of Mishpatim, the seventh of uh, the one without a father. However, if he does not completely rectify his ruach, then the neshama will not enter him, and only his nefesh and ruach will be in him. Likewise, if he doesn't completely rectify his nefesh, then he will only have his nefesh. He will remain without ruach and neshama. The Ruach and Neshama will remain in a place known to the Holy One. Blessed is He. Footnote 80. Every soul has its particular holding place in the upper realm prior to descending to the world of the body. There a place is prepared for each one of them. However, if he does not completely rectify his ruach, then the neshama will not enter him, and only his nefesh and ruach will be in him. Likewise, if he doesn't completely rectify his nefesh, then he will only have his nefesh. He will remain without ruach and neshama. The Ruach and Neshama will remain in a place known to the Holy One. Blessed is He. There a place is prepared for each one of them. Footnote 80. Every soul has its own particular holding place in the upper realm prior to descending to the world of the body. However, if a person does not completely rectify his nefesh the first time, footnote 81, the first time a person comes into the world, he can rectify his nefesh, ruach, and neshama in a single lifetime. However, should rectification of any level require more than one lifetime, the person cannot gain access to the next level of soul without first dying and reincarnating. However, if a person does not completely rectify his nefesh the first time and leaves this world, the nefesh will have to reincarnate even many times until it is completely refined as required. Then, even after it is completed, its ruach will not enter it. Footnote 82. The levels of soul are like layers in an onion, and the holier the level of soul, the more internal it is. Therefore, the ruach is inside the nefesh, and the neshama inside the ruach, etc. Then, even after it is completed, its ruach will not enter it, since the nefesh was rectified only through reincarnation, if the circumstances are not pressing, as will be explained with the help of God. Therefore, he will have to die, and the nefesh will have to return and reincarnate, and then it will merit its ruach. If he also rectifies the ruach, he will have to die, after which he will reincarnate, and the neshama will come into him in the same way as mentioned regarding the ruach. If the ruach is not rectified, they will have to reincarnate many times, the nefesh with the ruach, until the ruach is rectified. Then the person will die, and the nefesh and ruach will reincarnate with the neshama as well until the three of them are rectified, after which there will no longer be any need to reincarnate. Once the neshama is rectified, he will be a complete person as it is known. A bodhisattva, Chapter 2, Part 2, Post Rectification. However, you need to know that once the nefesh is rectified and comes as a reincarnation in order to take its ruach, as mentioned, in order to rectify it as well, and the person commits a sin in that particular reincarnation, the blemish will not affect the nefesh, that it can be said that it is required to reincarnate another time by itself to become rectified in the manner previously mentioned. Since the Ruach is within him, the blemish only affects the Ruach until it gets rectified. Footnote 83. Once a level of soul is completed in a previous lifetime, it cannot be damaged in a future lifetime. Therefore, if additional reincarnations are necessary to rectify the Ruach, the Nefesh, and the Ruach will come together and the two of them will reincarnate until the Ruach is rectified. Then the person will die, and the Nefesh and Ruach will again reincarnate with the Neshama as well. The three of them together until the rectification of the Neshama will also be completed. If during these reincarnations the person sins, the blemish will only affect the Neshama in the same way as was explained regarding the rectification of Ruach. It can happen that the Nefesh, during its rectification, becomes completed and refined to a great extent, then it will not need to come back again and reincarnate with the Ruach at its time of rectification. Rather, the Nefesh will remain above in a place fitting for it, bound up in the bundle of life. Footnote 84, 1 Samuel or Shmuel 25:29. And the Ruach will again descend and reincarnate to rectify itself. However, it's, footnote 85, the unrectified Ruach cannot come alone, but rather clothed within a nephesh, and therefore it is clothed with the nephesh of a convert. As mentioned in Sabah of Mishpatim, the two of them, footnote 86, his ruach with the nephesh of the convert, reincarnate together until this ruach is rectified. Then he will die and again reincarnate and join his original nephesh and join with his original nefesh, and join with his original nefesh will join with him. Footnote 87. Once the ruach is rectified, it can join together with the rectified nefesh, and the two of them will reincarnate together in order to receive their neshama until this neshama is also rectified. And sometimes the ruach also comes by itself. Footnote 89, that is, without the original nefesh, even though it is able to, but with the nefesh of the convert as before. In a reincarnation with the neshama until the neshama is rectified, then this person has no additional reincarnations, and the three of them will join above, bound up in the bundle of life as befits them. And know that this nefesh of the convert, since it is combined with the ruach in this world, helping it to refine its deeds and acting as a chariot. Footnote 90, just as the nefesh became a chariot for the ruach, the two of them will become a chariot for the neshama. For it in this world, the result of which was that this Ruach merited to become rectified. Therefore, this Nefesh of the convert will ascend with the main Nefesh of this Ruach, and the two of them will be on the same level in the world to come, neighbors, and it, footnote 91, the original Nefesh, will never separate from it. Footnote 92, the Nefesh of the convert. And know, footnote 93, this has previously been taught, that it can happen sometimes when a nephesh reincarnates alone to rectify itself and perfects its deeds until it merits the level of its ruach, that the ruach cannot come with it. As mentioned before, this because of the rule that the two of them or three of them cannot join together in a single reincarnation if the circumstances are not pressing, as will be explained in another discussion. Footnote 94 in chapter 4. Rather, each one will reincarnate by itself as mentioned before. First, the nephesh must be rectified, and even after rectification, it is not possible for the ruach to come with it. Rather, he must die, and after the nephesh will return to reincarnate and then merit the ruach. Likewise, after the two of them combine, Nefesh and Ruach, and they are rectified, they cannot receive their Neshama until they reincarnate another time. They will merit their Neshama. Chapter 2, Part 3, Ibur, Ibur. It should be known what happens to the Nefesh that alone was already rectified without its Ruach as mentioned. Footnote 95. In other words, it is not his first reincarnation. So even though he has completed the rectification of his Nefesh, he cannot receive his own Ruach before dying and reincarnating again. This could result in death to expedite the process of rectification, or it can result in Ibur, as will now be explained. However, the sod of the matter is that according to the level of refinement and the level of rectification of this nefesh, on that level itself, a soul will reincarnate into the body of this person while he is alive. Footnote 96. The classic case of reincarnation is a soul returning in a new body from birth, without which the body cannot survive. The form of reincarnation now being discussed is in addition to the person's main soul and can occur after birth throughout the person's life. Hence, it is called ibur, or fetus, becomes the person become spiritually impregnated with the additional soul. The nefesh of a righteous person who has already completed his rectification and reincarnation, having no further need to reincarnate, will enter and become the nefesh of this righteous person, will and function in place of the ruach for the nefesh of this person. Sometimes it is possible that the nefashos of earlier generations we will reincarnate there, going back to Avraham Avenu, peace be upon him, are similar. It will be based upon the rectification and refinement of the nefesh of this person. The matter of reincarnating during a lifetime is called by the rabbis Sod of the Ibur. And this is the basic difference between a regular reincarnation and Ibur. Sometimes it is possible for an actual Ruach of a righteous person to be an Ibur in a person. It can even be from the Rukus of earlier righteous people, including the forefathers. Their souls are in Eden, even in our late period in history. It all depends upon the level of mitzvos performed, their souls are in Eden, footnote 97, that is, in the Garden of Eden in the world to come. Even in our late period in history, the classic case of reincarnation is a soul returning in a new body from birth, without which the body cannot survive. The form of reincarnation now being discussed is in addition to the person's main soul and can occur after birth throughout the person's life. Hence, it is called ibur, or fetus, becomes spiritually impregnated with the additional soul. In my personal note on Eden, E, Den, Dene, Den, their souls are in God, who is like a supercomputer in the soul's electromagnetic application programs, barnamij in Arabic. It all depends on the level of the mitzvos performed by this person, because some mitzvos have the inherent ability to draw down the nefesh of a righteous person, besod ibur, and some mitzvos can draw down the ruach of a righteous person, as mentioned. Footnote 99: the greater the mitzvah being performed, the greater the soul he can potentially draw down. It is also possible that sometimes it will occur that the nefesh of a righteous person will be an ibur in him, and after that he will merit an ibur of another nefesh from different righteous person greater than the first. Thus, having his own nefesh, the nefesh of the righteous person who first came to him will be the level of ruach for him. The second nefesh of the greater righteous person, which came to him last, will be the level of neshama for him. Sometimes the nefesh of a person will be rectified so much that he will merit to achieve the nefesh of a particular righteous person. After that, he will reach the level of an actual ruach of a particular righteous person greater than both of them, until it is possible to reach the ruach of Avraham Avenu. My note, Lord Saturn, which Abraham is associated with. Uh, there was upon the earth, it is believed, a man who was called Saturn. Even the prophet Seth, the son of Adam, a gift from God, and Abraham Avinu, peace be upon him, had the likely the neshama of Seth. This is the sod of what they say, footnote 100, the Chachamim or Chazal Zil have written. This is the sod of what they, Zil, have written in the Midrashim, footnote 101. These are the non legal elucidations of the verses of the Torah, and specifically in Midrash Shmuel or Samuel, Samael. This is footnote 102 at the end of chapter 9. There is not a generation in which there is not someone like Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Shmuel, etc. Footnote number 103, Bereshit Rabbah 56:9. Again, in a general sense, it just means that people can act like these great people from the past on their level. However, Kabbalistically, the statement is to be taken literally, since in every generation, a person can merit the soul of people like the forefathers as Ibor. In my note, programs, hacking programs, which is a reference to the Matrix. Regarding the divisions of these details, the pen is too weak to put them into a book. The discerning person will understand and make connections on his own regarding the rest of the visions, regarding the rest of the divisions and the details. However, The principle is that, according to the level of the rectification and the refinement of the actions of the nefesh of a person, will he reach a soul from the souls of the earlier ones until the highest of all. Even in this generation of ours, it can be so. The connection can also be made in this way. When a nephesh and ruach reincarnate together and have been rectified, but are unable to acquire their neshama until another reincarnation, as mentioned, what was discussed above can happen to them while still alive. A nephesh or ruach or neshama of a particular righteous person can enter with them and serve as the level of neshama for them. It can also occur sometimes that after his three parts have reincarnated together, his nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and all of them have been rectified, a nefesh or ruach of a righteous person, as discussed, will then become an ibur within him. When he dies, he will be able to ascend according to the level of this righteous person with an ibur in him, and there in the world to come they will both be at the same height and level. Footnote 104. The fact that the person died with the higher level of soul, Yisod Ibur, means that his own nefesh, ruach, and neshama can achieve a higher level in the world to come than they would have otherwise on their own. This is the salt of what is written in the introduction to Berashish in Sefer Zohar on page 7b. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai fell on his face. This can also mean was embarrassed about something. And he saw Rav Hamnuna Sabah. He said that in that world they would lie together, both he and Rav Hamnuna Sabah. This is enough. Footnote 105. Since the soul of Rav Hamnuna was within Reb Shimon bar Yochai as an Ibur, he would be elevated to Rav Hamnuna's level in the world to come. End of chapter 2, Rectification, parts 1, 2, and 3. Part 4 are the reasons for Ibur.